Hello, hello, hello. We're
Hello.
live. I know it's about time that we're actually like live on time and everything ready to go. And we're on Instagram, which
We
is fantastic.
don't have to figure out technology out with the
I
horses.
know that's the fantastic part is that we don't have to figure out the technology with the horses.
But that's
Horses
okay.
don't have thumbs. They don't.
Yeah.
They don't know how to text. They have
And it's like no
not
matter how
thumbs.
many times you tell them to how you can hold the phone with a hoof, they just don't seem to listen. Damn wild horses.
Oh my gosh. And it's so funny because every single person that is in this description, Kern, Lima, David Goggins, Jim Kwik, Jordan Peterson, none of those guys went by the status quo either. None of them listened to what, conventional wisdom, puts into place for these guys. So it's really kind of poignant. They say, well, sorry, that just ain't me and that just ain't what I do and it ain't who I be.
You know what? And I
You know?
love that. I love that because you know me. I mean, how many times have I said to you, have we had conversations where I'm like, I don't care. I don't care what anyone says. I'm doing it the way I want to do it. And I don't freaking care because you know what? Sometimes what feels right doesn't sound right to other people, but it doesn't matter because it doesn't have to because they're not the ones
Mm.
in your shoes waking up every morning in your bed doing for you. Right. So I love that. So tell me, so I love that you're at this event and you're getting all this new wisdom, which I love because I haven't been able to do something like that in a while. And so I'm so excited to hear the nuggets that you've gotten because I love Jim Kwik and I love Dave. Well, David Goggins is a bit much for me, but I do love the other guys. So I want to hear what you've got. Dave Goggins is a little too much for me, but hey, each his own.
No. Yes, and it is to each his own, and I think that's kind of takes it back to the point. It's like what is it that moves you, and just because his thing ain't your thing doesn't mean that your thing has to be his. Just do your thing, and don't hurt, but do your thing. And his thing is all about that the Supperfest, man. And I kind of dig that. I'm at Foxtail Coffee in Orlando, Florida, and my fingers are numb. Like my fingers, I don't know if you could, like my fingers are freezing. I'm freezing. I'm in long sleeves and I'm in Florida. It's like 64 degrees outside. And for whatever reason, people in Florida have decided that they want to air condition the world. And you go in here, I'm like, I left my coat in the hotel room, so I can't put my coat on. I'm like right. And that's just it. It's like so when I think about a good Sufferfest, I'm more about the hot. I'm a hot heat miser, and you're up in New York and you're cold miser. But like if it's 800 degrees and 1,000% humidity, bring it because I know you. Like I need my AC. I don't want to be out in the heat. Oh, the humidity, man, dude. When I hear Floridians complain about the weather, I just want to junk punch them. I really do. I'm like, you guys, you are in Florida. So I
And
mean,
that's why I don't live in Florida because I mean, certain times of the year, but I'm one of those people that like if it's too hot and humid and I'm exerting energy, I will pass out. Like I can't handle it. And that's why it's always fun when you and I are in the heat working with the horses and it's like you're
'cause I'm
not
like,
yeah, you're like, we could go for days. And I'm like, someone give me water. I can't take it anymore. So it is so true.
you're like Pecos Bill in the desert. You're like water, and
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
I'm getting a tan, and and in the cold, I'm the opposite, man. I am like angry. I'm angry. I'm like,
I know.
and
And
you're
I mean,
like,
listen,
what? I'm in a t-shirt.
I don't love like the frigid cold, but I'm at the point now where like 30 degrees, I'm like, oh, it's nice out, Whereas so yeah, it's such a beautiful example of how we're all different and what is okay with one may not be with the other. And it's totally okay. There's no judgment, right? We don't all have to be David Goggins. We don't all have to be Danielle Anastasi, right? I mean, if you were Danielle Anastasi, I would say you are a blessed human being.
Everybody else is cursed unless you're Danielle Anastasi.
No.
That's
I
so funny.
wouldn't, no, but you know what I'm saying. Anyway,
I
so
do. I
tell
do.
us like something. Oh, hey, Karina and Marilyn. Hi, guys. Exactly why I
Hey,
avoid the hot weather. I know, right, Marilyn? I hear it.
yeah, you Northerners. I don't know, but and that's so funny because back in the day, my coach said, if you don't like cold, rainy, nasty weather, go to Sweden. And I'm like, doesn't it cold, rainy, and not there all the time? And and then but her point was, get uncomfortable. And that's now David takes that to the extreme, and I actually get to see him speak tomorrow. And I get to see him, and I get to see Jamie. Now I've seen Jamie speak several times, and the first time was at Business Mastery right during the pandemic, and we did it virtually. And and Tony was announcing her to come on stage, and I was thinking to myself, why is he Tony? What's the deal? Does makeup. Like, what is some makeup chick gonna do to do for Business Mastery? And then I'm thinking, isn't the beauty industry like a multi-billion industry? Just because I don't wear makeup every day doesn't mean that it's not a huge industry. So I was like, all right. So I just kind of held space for it, and I was waiting to listen to Jamie, and kind of like with like this, with that like, yeah, prove it. And I can only imagine how as she's talking and she's sharing her story. By the end of it, I was like, I feel you, girl. Because we all have those things where we go through rejection, we go through struggles, and we go through whatever it is we're going through for our mission and our passion. And what she was so passionate about was helping women feel better about themselves. And she has a new book out called Worthy that I just bought, and I can't wait to have her sign. That's it. And I got David's fucking have him sign too. And and I really am excited to connect with them, because it doesn't matter what your passion is. It doesn't matter what your goals are. But when you have something that is deep, that burns within your soul, you're gonna be met with rejection and criticism, and people saying that you're too much, or it's too hot, it's too cold, it's too whatever. And when you can just acknowledge it and then let it flow by you, just get that thick skin. And I can only imagine, especially with people that are close to you. And it makes me think of people like people, and I don't care what your belief system is necessarily, but look at someone like Elon Musk, who his mentors, as you're a kid looking up, like, remember those old, I think it's Pepsi commercials where it was Joe Montana and a little kid, he's like holding up the jersey and Joe Montana signs it, or Joe Namath, or one of those Joe football player guys. And he's like, he signs it, he's like, oh, you're my hero, and these are Elon Musk's heroes, the astronauts that like pioneered space travel and going to the moon, all this stuff. And they're creaming him, and they're disparaging him, and he used that as fuel, as rocket fuel to be intentionally punny. It's like that was his jet fuel to fuel him to the next level. And anytime somebody tries to take him down, he's I saw an interview with him the other day where he was like, he gave a big fu to some major players, because ain't nothing gonna. I love what you said. I think it'd be a good time to tell your music festival story where the horse stepped on your foot and you're like, ain't nothing gonna break my stride, even a 1,200-pound horse.
Well, I gotta say too, it's what I keep thinking as you're talking and saying all this is that idea of your conviction has to be so strong, because if anyone can crack it by saying something stupid, then it's not a strong conviction. Because let's face it, you and I wouldn't be here today if we didn't have those extremely strong convictions, because how many times do we face those challenges and the daily conditions of life, right? That force you to ask yourself questions of like, okay, how am I going to approach this? How do I want to handle this? How do I want to show up today? And that's absolutely right. And I think, the story of my music festival was, things started happening the second I woke up, getting scam type crazy threatening messages with graphic pictures that I was like, what? That was the first time I ever experienced that. And I was just like, all these things kept happening where it was like,
on the day of your event,
the day of that morning of the event, and things that if I had allowed them, they could have totally derailed me. And I could have potentially ruined the entire day. And instead, all I kept saying was, I was so convicted of like, no, nothing is going to break my stride today. Nothing is going to stop me, and nothing is going to ruin this day. And I mean, Jen, I was limping because, as we know, I was moving the horses and they were being attacked by these, what do we call them? B-52
the greenhead
bombers.
flies. Yeah, the bombers.
Those massive ones. They're legit, like this
You
big.
could put a saddle on them.
They're right. And so they were attacking the horses. So I had to move the horses last minute because where I had put them the night before in preparation was not working. So I was like, all right, I got to move these guys. So, I'm taking things on as they're happening, and I'm bringing the horses in one by one. And sure enough, the last one, Bourbon, who is pretty much the biggest one.
Huge. He is.
Yeah, he's a big guy. And it wasn't even his fault, and it wasn't my fault. It was nobody's fault. It was a situation that happened because the flies were attacking him, and he was just trying to get away from the fly because they hurt when they bite. They actually make the horse bleed. So, and I'm just, so he's moving quick, and I wasn't quick enough to step out of the way, and he stepped on my foot, and he took a full stride over my foot, and I was like. And I remember
it hurts, man.
It hurt. And I didn't scream. I wanted to scream, but I didn't scream because I had all these volunteers helping me setting things up. And I remember I held on until we got in the barn, and I put him in the stall, and I sat down and I hysterical cried for like 2 minutes. And then I was like, all right, nothing is breaking my stride today. I was literally limping for the entire day, and I didn't even care because you know what? It ended up being an amazing day. Nothing.
That's right.
And so it's like we have that choice. So how strong is your conviction in those moments? Because you can let it ruin the day, or you can not allow it to ruin the day. It's up to you. It's up to you. And how strong is your conviction to stick to that decision in those moments? That's what it all comes down to.
And I'll tell you what, if there has been one common thread that I have seen all week, it's that. It's Jesse Itzler. I'm in one of his mastermind groups, and and I'm still working on getting him here to experience the horses. But what he went through this whole thing, and he said I was running a race, and he couldn't get past mile 38. I'm like, I can't get past mile 3.8. I don't know what you're talking about. But he couldn't get past. So he had Chad Wright, the former Navy SEAL. It's like he brought Chad Wright in. He says, we are not going to give our pain a voice. And that's been the common thread throughout the entire thing. It's like your pain does not get a voice. And I saw, and he said, he's like, what Chad says, like, how you doing? And your answer is always going to be outstanding. How you doing, Jesse? Outstanding. How you doing? Outstanding. And you hear me say this kind of crap all the time, and I didn't realize what I was onto. All I knew is that I had a conviction for my mission. I had a conviction and an ideology and a passion for something that had a fire in my belly that was so deep and powerful, like the white, hottest, like 800-degree Kelvin kind of fire in my belly to get to do this work. Now, that doesn't mean I don't break my ankle on some of the strides sometimes, but nothing's going to break my stride. How you doing? Great. And the other thing that he said was like, I never get tired. I never get tired. You hear me say that all the time. Like, what are you doing? Nothing. What do you mean? Nothing. Because I'm never tired. I'm never tired. I'm never not doing something. Sorry. I'm never not doing something because I'm never tired. I'm always working. I'm always doing something. I'm always making progress. And I never get tired, and I never give my pain a voice, ever. And I hear other people give their pain a voice. And depending on where you are, I'm out in public. I'm not going to like put you in a headlock and say, better be doing outstanding. Do it outstanding. I'm not going to do that. But if you're in my world and you're in my house and you look into my house, you ain't going to that ain't going to fly with me. How you doing? Outstanding.
And this is where I do have a little bit of a different viewpoint, because for me, it depends where I am, who I'm with, and what's happening. Because at some point, the pain deserves a voice, and it needs to be felt, and it needs to be processed, and it needs to be released. So ignoring it is not good for extensive amounts of time, because that breeds sickness in the body. So I am not going to ignore my pain, and I don't want to live in a world where I have to ignore my pain. I want to live in a world where it's okay to feel the pain, because you know what? Growing up, what were we taught? Oh, that's no reason to cry. I'll give you a reason to cry. Well, guess what?
To cry about.
That's right. I carried those reasons to cry for 30 something years. And then that's what they fucked me up and caused problems. So you know what? I do not agree with that 100%. I do feel, and it's worked for me. You know, if I'm out and listen, that music festival, I wasn't going to scream and cry in that moment, but I walked in the barn, I put him in and I sat down and I gave myself 2 minutes to feel the pain and cry and let it out and then move on. Because you know what? Had I held on to that all day, who knows? I might have blown up on somebody who didn't deserve it. So I do think that there is a piece of that requires an acknowledgement of how we feel, because, you know, a lot of times people don't want to do that, but feelings are important. And if we don't feel them properly and release them properly, they could cause other problems. So yes, and right. Cause that's,
and yes, that's the thing. Yes. And I totally agree with what you're saying, because, and what did you do? You didn't give it the microphone on the main stage. You said, this is something that I need to deal with. I'm going to process it. I'm going to move it through my body. And then I'm going to go ahead and do what I need to do. So if you have, you feel it and you allow it to flow through your body, and you go, do I want to continue to give this pain a voice? Nor keeping the pain down is just as bad as like giving it the microphone on the main stage. And that's the point, is like you got to feel it. You're running mile 39 finally, Jesse, and you got 6 toenails rolling around in your shoes, then that's not my kind of pain. I like my pedicures, but I also am like, I'm okay with a lot of other different kinds of pain. But the key piece is to acknowledge it for sure, but not in the moment, when you're not in the race, not when you're on stage with the microphone. Handle that shit. What do they say? Compliment in public and criticize in private. And that's the same with your pain. Flow through the day, airing your pain at your music festival. You could have made a big deal. You could have talked to everybody about it and said, hey, everybody, look what happened, my toe. And you could have gimped around and gotten sympathy and sat at the first aid station that you didn't have at your own event. But it's like,
I do have a first aid kit available and ready, but
so what do you do? That is the key piece, because a lot of times, and this is one thing that I don't, even if you're not like a person that wants to run ultra marathons, we have an ultra marathon of a different kind. We have an ultra marathon where we are wanting to actually change the world and the way people look at horses and each other through horses. And that's my 100-mile race. That's my passion and mission. I may not ever go like Cameron Hayes and bow hunt a ram out of the Pacific Northwest and pack it out on my llama. But, I do have it's a different path. But the key piece is that you stay on that path. And when the pain comes up, you handle it, you deal with it, you process it, and you move forward. You check that box and move forward. Because otherwise, all you're going to do is focus on that pain. And I do not suffer fools when they're giving their pain a voice. And I have a rule. You get to talk about that same problem. You get to talk about it twice. That's it. It's just like watching, in the training videos that we have with the horses. Like I told you this, right? When we very first started working together, I said, we'll do a video. You get to watch it twice, and then that's it. And then you archive it and you put it away. You learn from it and move on. Now you say, well, I could go back and watch it a third time and maybe get another piece of wisdom. But by then you're so far down the path going forward that going back is just going back into the past, trying to figure something out that doesn't need to be figured out. Take your couple of nuggets, move through the pain, and give something else a voice. And that something else is progress.
Well, let me ask you something, because this poses an interesting thought for me, because I do feel strongly, and we've touched on this a few times, and we might have conflicting views. I don't know, but I do strongly feel like I learn differently than you learn, right? I remember things differently than you remember them, right? And it's like when we work with the horses, one of the biggest important pieces is that we are always acknowledging, depending on which horse we're working with, what they need in that moment and how to handle them in that moment, right? Because how we handle Trace is different than how we handle Dante, and different than how we handle Bourbon, and different than how we handle Rose. And so with that thought in mind, this idea of You can only watch the video twice. Well, but what if I feel I need to watch that video 4 times? Like, what do you do with those people who may be a little different? And look, let's face it, right? Because it could be an Elon Musk type of person in one of your courses or one of your classes, right? And they might question a little more. I mean, let's face it, you and I question all the time. I'm always like, well, I don't understand why. And I tell me why. Right? So like we can equally drive each other crazy. Let's just be honest.
And you make a good point. And at the end, it's a rule, and there's always exceptions to those rules. But the reason that rule is in place is that we tend to get kind of caught in the Harry Potter pensieve, or what was that mirror that he would look into in Harry Potter, where he would look in and he'd see his parents, and he would sit there and he'd be like mesmerized by it. And that's the reason why we only watch it twice. Is it a hard and fast rule? No, of course not. Just like, hey, you know what? There was this one piece that I really wanted to go back and check in on. Then fine, of course, go back if you have the right intention. And the intention and the motive matters, as we know. It's like the intention behind going back and watching that video is it to just watch yourself again and again and again and again, which is typically the case. And if you watch it that third time without an intention to pick something up, like I wanted to watch that one part where I was doing X, Y, and Z to learn something. That's intentional, it's clear, and it has a beginning, middle, and end to it. But the beginning, middle, and an end doesn't happen if you don't have some kind of guideline in place that says, don't continue to study the past of your past mistakes, because we are so self-critical that we'll go back and watch it and say, oh, I could have done this better, I could have done that better, I could have done that better. Yeah, of course you can. But after a couple of 2 or maybe 3 times, if you have something specific you want to touch back on, you start studying your mistakes. And that's not progress. Yes, learn from it. We study history for a reason, but we don't study history to go back and say, let's go practice those mistakes. We study history so we can learn from those mistakes and then have a better intention going forward. So that's the big key piece from that. And that takes me to I went and got the opportunity to see Jordan Peterson on Wednesday. That was phenomenal. He had never done he did a format he'd never done before, and he wasn't really prepared. And I sat there and watched a brilliant man connect to God. I know, and that may sound like a lot, but he was sharing the stories of Moses, he was sharing the story of Elijah, and he was sharing the story of Jonah. And they were all very similar, and it's the hero's journey. If you've ever read Joseph Campbell's work about the hero's journey, it's very powerful. And you got to go through the belly of the whale, and the belly of the whale is turning away. Is when you find yourself in the belly of the whale, it's because you have turned away from source. You're listening to ego, you're listening to your fears, and you're running away from what God has put you on this planet to do. But when you run away, when you turn away from the intention that God has from you, when you turn away from your soul's purpose, bad things happen, and you create hell on earth for yourself, and you create pain for yourself. And he was talking about, like, the belly of the whale it's not the whale, it's God, it's pain. The belly of the whale is not an actual whale. He didn't swallow a man. It brought him to the depths of his pain until he had to surrender. And a lot of times, I kind of feel like I went through about a little bit last fall, when I would just, I finally got to this new property, and everything's amazing, but I was suffering. And I was suffering because I felt like I had to do everything. And I had to try and have control over everything that was happening. And that does not fly, man. That when you try and feel like you have to have control over the how. And our friend Glenna, I just had coffee with Glenna, and we were just talking about that. And she's like, well, how do you find surrender before you have so much pain? Well, you can't. You can't. Sorry. You got to go through it.
Sister, my sister's joining and watching. My sister, say hello to Maria.
That's the sister. The actual sister.
That's my witchery sister. My sister. That's how we refer to each other.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's a lot, actually. All of that is a lot. And I just threw myself off by ranting, sister, that I actually lost my point, because I did have a point. But Jordan Peterson is very interesting to watch and listen to, and sometimes I find myself like feeling a certain way about some of these opinions and ideologies and stories. But I do like a lot of what he says, and so anyone that knows who he is, I think he is a great, because he does also challenge a lot of
Oh
society
yeah.
ideologies that have become more normal now than they used to be, and I do like that about him. I like that he
Yes.
challenges some of those
Because I don't
beliefs.
agree with everything he says
Right,
either.
right,
You know,
right.
I don't. There's some things I'm like, wow.
And I think we don't have to. I think that's a part
That's
of
right.
life that is so beautiful that people seem to forget. And it's like, as soon as someone doesn't agree with you, there's this
Everything.
oh my gosh, it's like, then there's this like judgmental right and wrong of it all. But like, what does it matter? Like, if I'm vaccinated or not, what does it matter? Like, what happened to things being our choice, and respecting each other, as long as
Free
there's a
will.
level of respect in the choice that you made? Because look, we're not all the same. We don't have the same upbringing that led us to the same lessons learned, that created the same expectations and belief systems. We don't have all of that. That's the same,
That's
and
right.
that's what makes us different and individuals. And
Everyone
there's a
else
beauty
is
in
so
that.
differently different.
Everybody's so creative,
Exactly. That lady is so funny. So who are we referring to? There's this lady on TikTok that makes fun of people cooking ridiculous recipes, things like Cadbury eggs wrapped in hamburger, dipped in caramel sauce, fried in bacon. And everybody's
and
so
then put in the
creative.
microwave. Like, I don't
Microwave.
even. Yeah, it's so weird,
She
and her
makes fun of
commentary.
them. I mean,
Yeah, her
it's
commentary is
hysterical.
hysterical. But
Yes, and
anyway, so
she says, it's okay to be differently different, and that is the key to that conversation is like, and what I learned from Jamie about how to manage rejection, what I learned from David about resilience, and what I love in this is David's stuff. And I mean I don't need to steal any of his stuff, but because I acknowledge it. He talks about when you feel like you're at your pain threshold, when you feel like you're like, I can't do anymore, that you're usually only at about 40% of your capacity. And the reason why that is because your brain is trying to protect you. And this happens with horses too. It's called the flight line. Here's your ethology lesson for equine for the day. Is horses have what's called a flight line. And if you have a long horse, that doesn't mean their body's long like Dante, or a short horse, that doesn't mean it's short like Tuesday or Oliver. It means that it's the distance that they are willing to run when they feel like their life is threatened. And if you have a long flight line, like a thoroughbred will run for a very long period of time, or an Arabian will run hundreds of miles, then before they will turn around and stop and check back in with the left side of their brain and see if T-Rex is still chasing them, right? And some of us have long flight lines where we just go and go and go and go before we stop and check in with source and say, should I keep running? And if you have a short flight line, then you run like Tuesday, her flight lines must be Kansas, So she's got a very short flight line because she doesn't get phased very easily. Now, those two things, there's a balance here to this, because if you have a long flight line, you might run till you're so exhausted that you run from one T-Rex to another. You're like, oh, now I'm tired and depleted, and I don't have any more energy to run from the next T-Rex. But if you're like Tuesday and you have a too short a flight line, the T-Rex is chasing, you're like, meh, and they go and they grab you. So there's a balance to that.
That's interesting, because it makes me think about people who have an issue with everything, who argue everything, who have a problem with everything, who fight everything, right? It's like, instead of just
I
going
dated
with
that.
the flow, like riding the wave and seeing where it takes you, and, not dwelling too much on certain things that are happening, like, and I mean, I've gotten better and better at that, because I was that person years ago who would argue my opinion to everyone because my opinion was right. And if, what do you mean you don't agree with me? I'm going to show you how you have to agree with me because I'm right. Right. And that was exhausting. Like I exhausted myself.
Yes. It
And
is exhausting.
and I don't do that anymore. And now it's at the point where, like, you know, now I can watch people engaging in their own thing and I don't interrupt. I don't get involved. I just allow it to happen because I have more important things to exert my energy on. And so it's a beautiful example of like, what are we giving our energy to? What are we allowing
Yes.
to aggravate us, to piss us off, to take us to a point where we need to fight and fight and fight and fight and fight? Because is the
We're
fight
not
necessary?
itchy and scratchy.
To your point, like when you're running from one T-Rex for so long, you end up running into another T-Rex. And then when does
That's
that
right.
end? That's a vicious cycle, right? And
It
if
is a
you're
vicious
getting
cycle.
some kind of,
And then you become addicted to the fight
I was
because that's the
just
way.
going to say, you get some kind of secondary gain out of that, right?
Yes.
Day job.
Yep.
And
remember that guy I dated a couple of years ago that's all he did was fight all the time. Like that was his thing. He got off on it, you know. He was like, and remember, we're like, I gotta get out of this room. Like the energy was so tough, and to be around that energy, it's like there's no direction to it. It's just a argumentative chaos, and you
yeah.
can get a secondary gain from it and addicted to it, and without a clear intention and a clear path, anybody can break your stride.
Well, and that's right. And think about how much of your power you're giving away. You know, like my father is a perfect example of this because I know I can say certain things that are going to flip a switch. And sometimes I don't even know what those things are. And I might say them unknowing. And all of a sudden there's that wild card that freaks out. And it's like, okay, so I've worked really hard in that scenario to not be affected so much by the things. Sometimes it takes a little more work than other times, you know. I'm still human. I still have my moments, but it's so true. And then that makes me think about, like, you know, the people who are like that, how do the people around you feel? You know, are they comfortable having conversations with you? Do they feel like they're walking on eggshells? Can they confront you when there's issues? Are you able to actually navigate conversations with ease, right? Because like
last night when I was like, you'd walk to Florida and kill me if I did that. So Daniela did this thing yesterday, this wellness treatment that I had heard about. And I mean, it's kind of, you know, it wasn't very, I don't know. Was it fun? Was it pleasant? Was it gross? Was it, I mean, I've never done it, so I just had heard about it. But
it wasn't gross. It was weird and different, and nothing happened, so it was fine. But like at one point when you were like laughing about, oh my goodness, I was like, if this is a joke and you're making a prank for me to do this, I will literally come to Florida and smack you with a leather glove across the face.
And then when she said that, I was like, oh God, I hope this works.
It's so good for people to have a healthy fear, right? Of you. That's one thing I will say I appreciate having inherited from my father. That's one trait I can gladly express, because when he talks, people get scared, and for some reason, when I get feisty, people get scared. But that's okay.
Well, and you know, it's less at first. And you know what? When I first met you, it was fear. It was like legit Bella. I would go full on triggered Bella. And if you guys don't know what that is, just click on some of our shit, and we talk about the horses and how their personality types. Like Bella is my instinctual extrovert, you know, where she's, oops, we lost Daniela. Where hopefully she can hop back in. But I'll finish the story about Bella. It's like where, you know, if you are in a position where you're getting triggered, you're like, oh God, is she mad at me? Did I do something wrong? Like, oh man, you know, and that's what happened. And so, but now that I don't feel that way quite so much, you know, she said when she said, "Oh, I hope this isn't a prank," I was like, "Ooh, damn! I wish I'd thought of that. That'd have been a hell of a good prank." I wouldn't have told her for like 6 months, but it would have been a fucking great prank, you know.
And what a smart way to handle it. I can't tell her now; she'll kill me. But I'll wait 6 months. That talk about knowing how to handle, knowing in your audience and knowing how to navigate, huh? It's like,
Oh my
So
God, it's
true.
so true. It's so true. And the interesting thing is because it used to flip me into triggered Bella. But as we have, Danielle and I have navigated some of our relationships and how we respect each other and all these other things, it's like I could, I mean, that she would be like, damn, all right, you know what? I did it. Fair. I would have gotten a good fare. Now
Well,
I'm not going to get a good fare out of her yet. For it would take me 6 months. Like, but wait, our live on Friday in December. I'll say so. That whole thing I told you about, I totally made that up. But I can't do that really because sometimes what I say is so out there and so like what, but then when you do it and you see it work and you see it has that, like it actually happens, like I got to keep my side of the street clean with that. I can, because I would be a prankster if I could get away with it, but I really can't because my stuff is so sometimes avant-garde that I would lose credibility going forward, or at least hesitation going forward. So I have to be very forthright about that. But the key piece of this is that not one, because I respect Danielle at a very high level, and two, oh, look at my little thing. And I wonder if we get the balloons if I do this. It does balloons when I.
look, mine doesn't do anything. Come on.
It does something. You look ridiculous.
My camera's afraid of me too, apparently.
So I think one does, like you do this, sometimes it'll do.
Okay. Nope.
I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm the host. I don't know. But the thing that's cool is she's like, I inherited this from my father. Well, I borrow, like sometimes I'm like, Daniela, you're going to be so proud of me. I borrowed some of your Sicilian today. And I'm like, and she's like, and then she's, sweep the leg, Daniel, son. And I'm like, oh, you're going to be so proud of me. I stood up for myself and I socked him right in the jaw. And you're like, you socked a 3-year-old in the jaw? What?
Well, it's just a perfect example too, right? Back to that idea of our perspectives and our belief systems are all different. And so what bothers you enough to feel like you need to express a strong boundary may not bother me as much. You know, I had a conversation just yesterday with a friend of mine who was telling me that she removed a mutual friend we have out of her life for so many reasons. And I respect that. Do what you got to do. But the funny,
Right.
you know, but the example of this is that the difference is like for me, those aren't reasons that I would remove someone out because I have a different perspective around certain things like that. But
right.
we're all entitled to our perspective, and that's totally okay. But as long as we can understand and respect where each other is at, and
stay consistent with it. In order for people, that's why I couldn't have made that thing a prank. I mean,
right.
I would be hysterical. I would
Right, because then I would never listen to anything you say again about holistic remedies. I'd be like,
anything.
yeah, okay. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
anyway.
like that, yeah. And I think that that's a big piece because I like what you're talking about, and actually when Glenna was here, we were talking about it too. It's like, when do you know when certain people are pulling at you and pulling you off your stride? You know, if somebody isn't going to help you, you know, give the microphone to the right voice that you need to listen to. If someone isn't yes-anding you, and I love that, yes and. Like, no, yeah, most people say, yeah, but you know, oh, you want to build a lime jello rocket ship to the sun? Yeah, that sounds cool. But where are you going to put the seatbelts? And that's dumb. You know, there's always that little pullback from it. And I don't want people in my life that are not going, yes, and I can't wait to see, you know, what it looks like. You know, I can't wait to see you be successful. I can't wait to see you rise and stride because, and my buddy Alex over there, he says people are willing to cheer you on when you're the underdog, when you're using a roll of paper towels as a pillow and sleeping on the floor. They're all like, yeah, go Jen, go D, you got this. And then when you get this, people are like, oh, she's kind of full of herself. Oh, well, and you start presenting, because when you start rising a little, you know, your boundaries get stronger. You get more conviction about who you are and how you communicate and how you show up. And so you start expressing all those people that were cheering for you and saying you're wiping your butt with the pillow that you're sleeping on. You go, girl. You know, they're like, she's kind of, she used to be like really humble, and now she's kind of full of herself. I don't know if I want to be around that anymore. Great. You know, you don't want to be around that? Great. Get out of the way because I'm going here. There are tens of thousands.
And nobody's going to break my stride.
Nobody's going to break my stride. It's so true. It's so true. But and there's something about humility and being humble, because anybody that's self-made, man, anybody that started from something or started from nothing and made something of themselves, man, hats off to or hat on, because that's nice to have hats some days. It makes things easy. But it's just really, it does. And I applaud people like Jamie and people like David and people like Jim and Jordan, and Dr. Jordan Peterson got completely canceled, ostracized from the psychiatric community. And all of his, all of that. You should see, they had his picture in the archives, your yearbook photograph, and it was like, they like photoshopped him to look like a toad. It was ridiculous, and it was really bad. And to see him on stage last night in front of a group of people talking about like stories from the Bible and things that just were obvious downloads straight from the source that were his truth, whether I agree with every word he said or disagree with most of what he said, I think we were talking about this a lot too. It's like, how can you have a lively conversation with people because you and I disagree like on the regular, but to the point where we have enough mutual respect that we can listen and go, and be contemplative about it and take what makes sense to us and put the rest in the archive, just like watching the training videos. Take what makes sense to learn and then archive the rest, and then maybe pick it up later down the road. We don't delete the video. We just archive it for now because we're going forward and we're making progress and we're listening to what makes sense to us and being, what does Don Miguel Ruiz say? He says, be skeptical, but listen. And I think skeptical is a word that makes sense to more people than discernment. But I think it's like, just be discerning over whose voice is in your head every day. And like I recently had a fallout with a friend, and after it was over, I was like, was that relationship continuing to serve her and to serve me? And if it's not a what do you say, a full body fuck yeah? If it's not a full body fuck yeah, then it's a hell no. That's how I feel about it. Yeah. And so, and now in the situation, like, she decided to just leave, like delete, block, leave, where I would have just moved her chess piece out of my relationship labyrinth over here, but then I realized, that voice, and I didn't need that voice in my head anymore on any level, because the advice I was getting wasn't serving me either.
Right. And I think too that when that happens, I mean, it could be harsh and it could feel a certain way, but it's also kind of like, all right, thanks, thank you. And
thank you.
Good luck to you, because I think we can say all kinds of things about, it could have been done this way and it could have been done that way. But again, people are showing up the best they can with the knowledge and understanding that they have. And so, is it mean that it's okay and you give people a pass? Not necessarily, but what are you going to do? You're going to fight it, right? You're going to you can't, right? You just got to accept and move on. And this is that piece of going with the flow that I think is super important, because I mean, unless there's something you can do that you feel strongly about. I have one friend, my lovely Barb, my Barbara Love. She is the only friend I've ever had that, we had a moment where I was going through stuff and I wasn't being a good friend, and she confronted me on it and was ready to walk away. And I immediately was like, I'm not okay with this. I owned my shit. I apologized. And because I loved her and I still love her, and I really appreciate the friendship. And so I was quick to acknowledge my wrongdoing, apologize for it, and our friendship is beautiful and it continues to evolve and grow. So, if it's something like that, where you've done wrong and you are able to be vulnerable and admit to that, then own it and admit to it, because you know what? That will only strengthen bonds. It will not make it worse. Like, vulnerability is the courage that creates stronger bonds, right? So yes. I think that's a huge piece too. But there are also times where, what do they say? People come into our lives for a reason, a season, or a lesson, right? So It's just knowing what it is, being able to have that discernment and then keep moving. Because you know what? Living in the past doesn't help anything. It creates depression and stagnation. And living in the future is also can create anxiety and uncertainty. And so just be present and enjoy these moments. There's so many beautiful moments happening every single day in this
That's
present.
right.
And what does Eckhart Tolle say? All we ever truly have is this
It is the
moment,
present moment.
the present
That's right.
moment. And it's so true. And I want to say that we're at 44 minutes and 44 seconds.
44 seconds. That was awesome. And on
And
that note, I think this is like a great way to end because I need to go and get some
yes.
preparation. I am going to go see Jamie tomorrow and David, and hopefully I get a chance to meet one or both of them. It would be lovely. And I know that the wisdom that people that have been through areas of life that I have yet to experience or have experienced at a different or higher level than myself, like that's the pure group I want to be around. I don't want to be around a group of people that are doing things that aren't taking them towards their soul's purpose, and having that discernment and being skeptical and asking yourself on the regular, who is in my life that is continuing to help me maintain my stride rather than break it. And that awareness is power, you guys, and that vulnerability to acknowledge when you've broken your own stride and your friendships, like what you're talking about with Barb. And it's so true. And I know Barb not as well as you do, obviously, but she's a lovely person, and I can see why you would be like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe I'm the one who's breaking my own stride, and maybe maybe this is a redirection. Maybe that rejection and the moment was a redirection for you to go, hey, wait a minute. No, I want this person in my life because I see the value in it. Right. And I think having that awareness is incredible. So we've got some great things coming up, guys. Make sure you're joining us every Friday, Free Coaching Friday or Fun Coaching Friday. It's always fun. It's always free. And we'll be here on Fridays. But in the Zen Club that is coming up, we're going to be dropping the links here soon. We're starting in April. We're going to be doing some really great things. It's a private community. It's supporting the horses. It's supporting each other. And it's creating a community of people that are connected and collaborative and communicative and contributing. Lots of C words there. So Daniela's up in Artemis Hill, up in New York. I'm in West Palm Beach, Florida. Well, not right now. I'm in Orlando, but my farm is in West Palm Beach or just south of there. So if you want to come and visit the horses or experience these guys, just reach out, because this is empowering stuff. And we associate and we surround ourselves with the best people we can possibly, because what we are learning from the best in the world, we're bringing to you, we're bringing to our community. So I hope you join us. And Danielle, anything else you want to add?
Just remember to believe in yourself.
It will change your life. All right, y'all. We'll see you next week.
Bye.